Hi everyone and welcome to another video. In today's video I'm going to be talking about the 3 key things I took away from reading this book. It's a book about Walmart written by Sam Walton, the founder of Walmart. It's called Made in America and it's easily one of the best business books of all time. I think you'd actually be hard pressed to find someone else who's read this book and doesn't feel the same way. It's really good, to the point where people actually attribute a lot of their success in business to Sam Walton, to Walmart, and to this book in particular, so it's definitely one worth getting into. Now, as I mentioned, I'm going to be taking away 3 key points and explaining them in this video, but if you want a full-on summary of the book, then check out one that I've written up. It's a 3-page document, it's bullet pointed, really easy to digest. There's a link to it in the description below, so have a look if you like. But for now, let's get on and speaking about these 3 key things that I took away from this book. Now, key lesson 1 is a really big one. It's a really important one. It's about Walmart's growth strategy. I learned how powerful it was, and I also learned how important it is to have scale in niche local markets. In a nutshell, once the ball got rolling on Walmart's growth and they were looking to roll out a lot more stores now and become a bigger player in the market, they took a very strange strategy, very revolutionary strategy. You can characterize it in this way. So what they do is they set up a warehouse somewhere in the sticks. So imagine a warehouse there. Then they draw out a circle around the warehouse, and this circle has a radius equivalent to a day's drive for a delivery truck, for instance. So they have this big circle, this big catchment area for this warehouse, and they'd start building out stores around the perimeter. Over time, they would actually then look to come in from the perimeter back to the warehouse, fill out every state, county, and town all the way back to the warehouse and saturate that circle, saturate that area. And in this way, they've kind of tied up this local area. It's kind of their little market, they kind of own it, they're the number 1 player in that market. And it's also important to realise they're entering small towns, so towns with populations less than 50,000 people. Kmart and big competitors were not interested in these towns, so Walmart had pretty weak competition. To kind of draw out why this growth strategy is really important, let's look at what competitors did. So on one hand, you have small competitors. They didn't have the requisite scale to be investing in distribution centres and warehouses, etc., and trucks, whatever. It just wasn't part of their business. It couldn't be. It was too expensive. On the other hand, you had big national scale players like Kmart, and what they would do is target big areas, so towns and cities with hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, and plonk their stores right in those areas. So it looks like a really lucrative strategy, but what it meant was that their stores were separated. They were actually quite far from one another, and that's just a nature of being in cities. Like, cities don't tend to be next to one another like small towns are. Now, the consequences of this are really important. So for Walmart, it actually made sense to build these centers because they could split the cost over loads of stores in the nearby area, in the catchment area, but no other company kind of had that luxury. So Walmart was able to build out a first-class distribution center and not rely on a middleman, not pay a middleman's fees, and therefore they could actually give customers lower prices than these other discount competitors. And this is the aim of the game in a low price leadership industry. So Walmart would tie up the industry in that way, but they'd also be erecting a huge barrier to entry, because now for a competitor to butt heads with Walmart in one of their local catchment areas, in one of their circles, they have to spend all this money to build up similar infrastructure, and they probably won't win enough market share to justify that. So having this setup as well of stores in a cluster format also meant that it was really easy to govern these stores. And finally, the strategy was highly repeatable. There's no science to this, there's no intricacies or nuances. It's really an easy strategy. It's highly repeatable. There's so many small towns in America, so many circles you can build out, and Sam actually calls this rolling out the formula. So to sum up this point, the Walmart story shows you that local scale matters. It matters a huge amount. And what I also learned from this is that 2 companies can be growing their revenues by adding more stores, but one company can be doing that and building a whole business around it, a whole big competitive advantage, investing loads behind it. Another company can be doing it but not having that same advantage, not doing the same requisite investment, etc. This company can get stronger while this company won't be as strong, and possibly even get weaker, especially when they meet in competition. The second key lesson I took away from reading this book was learning the difference between good operators and good promoters. Now Sam contextualizes this in the discounting industry in the 1970s when it became a really popular model, and a lot of different types of people got into the game. Real estate types were like, yeah, I've got a building, let's make a discount store out of it. People who had wholesale operations also dived in and benefited from the discounting phenomenon. And for a good 10 years in the 1970s, these guys made a killing. They made a lot of money, but they weren't there to stick around. In fact, a lot of them just disappeared once the industry matured and competition became more fierce. Good operators lasted. Operators like Walmart and Kmart, who were in the background, maybe not so flashy, but they were building really good businesses, investing in systems and keeping their ear close to the ground. I guess the takeaway here is know what you're investing in, know what you're building, and factor that into your decision making around business. Are you building first class operations, or are you a product of promotion? The third lesson I took away from this book is I learned what a low cost culture really looks like. Kind of figured it out through the stories of the book. So in the book there are so many extreme examples showing the lengths that Walmart went to in order to save money, and what it showed me was that if you're going to study a low cost leader in a market, it's probably better to look at the extreme examples rather than look at the hundreds of things that they can save costs on and get right, etc. Don't get me wrong, those small things matter a great deal. It's probably more though a manifestation of the culture rather than saying like this is our culture, we save on all these hundreds of things. But I really think commitment wins out here. So if you can show really strong commitment to saving costs, you're probably going to be a really good low cost leader. And Walmart showed commitment in a huge way. I think two examples that really stood out for me in this book were Walmart's investments relating to the IT systems, and also Walmart's it wasn't really a policy but attitude to business expenses. Now these are two areas where companies can get really wrapped up and find it easy to justify spending lots of money. So for IT systems, they'd be like, yeah, let's just spend whatever it takes to get this IT system up and running because it's so important to our competitive edge. It's really important to get it right so that it lasts into the future, and we really don't want anything to go wrong. Now Sam Walton recognized all of this stuff is really important, but he also recognized that this attitude wasn't congruent with the rest of the business. This is not how Walmart's attitude to costs normally goes. So Sam actually questioned a lot of this expenditure, where another company would kind of just accept that this is going to be a really expensive project, let's just section it off and just spend a lot of money there. So that's one example of strong commitment to low costs. The second example that sticks out to me is to do with business expenses, and the best example of this is actually when they went out and set up new stores in different small towns across America. They'd have to send out a team, and normally the protocol is, you set a team up in a hotel, you give them nice meals, a lot of allowances, and like spending allowances per day. But at Walmart, that really was not the picture. So there were some stories of store openings where they send out a team and they'd just crash in a manager's house instead of staying at a hotel or something like that. This helped them save a ton of money, but it was more than that. It was just a demonstration of the low-cost culture. I'm pretty sure everyone in that room then understood what Walmart is all about, and they probably behaved in a way that propagated that low-cost culture. So to summarize this point, I'd just say, if you wanted to understand a low-cost culture, if you wanted to identify a low-cost culture, look at the extreme examples, look for commitment. So that's it. Those are my 3 key takeaways. There's really a lot more to this book, so I really recommend reading it, or at least reading my summary, which is linked in the description below as I mentioned before. But for now, thanks for watching.